Hey there, hope you're doing well. And if you're living on the East Coast, like near the DC Metro, you're enjoying this unusually warm and nice day. It's like, high 50s or low 60s in February. So it's brilliant. Without further ado, let me get into this podcast. This is, I want to say, like podcast number 10 in the series of API Gateway podcasts. And I'll speak to the current work that we've been doing the last week or so. We are actively working on testing our endpoints, each and every single one of our endpoints before we go live. Hopefully, in the next 3 weeks, fingers crossed. And we're going to be publishing our API on multiple hubs, like I've mentioned in the previous podcast. But the endpoints are sort of hub agnostic. There are some nuances to how we're going to publish them on different hubs. But outside of that, they are essentially the same endpoints providing the same business value, regardless of which API hub you come through as a subscriber, right? So we are testing the endpoints currently on AWS Marketplace, essentially doing it through Postman. So we go through these endpoints, and here are some of the challenges we are running into. We found some solutions and workarounds to sort of expediting our work, but these are some challenges that if we've run into, and most likely you might run into as well. So hopefully this helps you. So let's say we have about close to 400 endpoints. Forget the number, just take that as a sizable number of endpoints, right? So we have mappings defined in our gateway. So the request flows through our gateway and then gets routed to different microservices. Now, for these mappings to happen, we have a YAML file, and I've spoken to it at good length in some of these other videos. So if you haven't seen them, check them out. The mapping files, the endpoints are mapped in those, the mappings are defined, sorry, the mappings for those endpoints are defined in those YAML files. And they serve two purposes. The first purpose essentially is the fact that they, when your request is entertained at runtime, it goes through these mapping files. We determine what mappings, how the routing should happen, and yada yada yada. Outside of that, those mappings also lend themselves to be published as collections, as Postman collections in OpenAPI specifications, etc. So we take those endpoints and publish them on Postman, and we start testing the endpoints, right? Let's say we are finding an issue. It could be a code issue or it could be a mapping issue, right? In most cases, as it turns out, it's a mapping issue because we have our API endpoints published, and consumed by our own web and mobile apps, so that they are pretty stable. So it's not really code issues. And even if they are code issues, they're agnostic to the existing clients. They're in the gateway code that we are about to go live with, right? It's the first version of it. So long story short, it's either mapping issues or code issues in the gateway. And we make changes to, if it's mapping issues, we make changes to those YAML files, and then we republish those endpoints. Now, when you republish it, a new Postman specification comes into play. We import that specification, and then we start testing out. But the thing is, we've iteratively gone through a lot of the directories collections in the previous specification version, right? How do we tell that those endpoints have already been tested, so we don't have to retest those endpoints unless we actually touch related code? We have our own quirky ways of doing it. We used certain emojis like a smiley, a bug face, an emoji with droplets that tells us that it's in progress, the one with the tick mark that says it's complete, or one that says it's failed. We prefix the directories on Postman with one or more of those emojis, so it gives us an indication of the progression. And we also prefix our specific independent individual endpoints with those emojis as well, right? So it tells us as developers and testers like what's going on, what the progress is. Because doing this through, say, GitHub, which is where we do our repo level project management, would be very even more laborious because there's a lot of endpoints. So we're going to have to track each one of them, add labels to these tickets and whatnot. It's going to just slow us down. So we've sort of we came up with this approach that works quite well. We share the workspace with folks in our team. Everyone updates it, so we know what's going on, who's working on what. But the challenge is, every time we make changes to the gateway and the mapping files, we publish a new version of the Postman workspace. And when you import that, there's no way to merge this, right? There's no notion of merging these workspaces, unfortunately, unlike code. So it is a new collection that comes into play with a number of directories. Now, the tricky part here is, how do you port over what has been completed in the previous run to this current run? That's one of the main challenges we've run into. So we've come up with certain design patterns that sort of works for us, but there's no established way. I'm going to share some screenshots so hopefully it helps you, gives you a visual representation of what I'm trying to tell you here. So let's say we have a workspace with a collection with a number of different directories and a large number of endpoints in each directory. we prefix them, like I said earlier, either the directory itself or the endpoint, saying it's done, not done, in progress, failed, etc. But when we have a new version, we have to port that over, and that's a meticulous / laborious task. So we have not actually done that. We have different incremental versions of these Postman workspaces, and then if we've completed a directory or an endpoint, we don't port that information over to the next version. It's sort of cumulative. So we have to go back to the previous version to tell that that endpoint has actually been tested. It is painful, but it's less painful than creating these tickets and adding labels and statuses and whatnot, right? So we've been moving along in that fashion. So I'll probably do another video where I actually speak less to it and show you what actually it looks like. And you can tell me whether you've done it differently or whatnot. But this approach works, right? It works, and we've been moving along quite nicely. It's just a little, there's a lot of manual intervention here because we haven't gotten to creating recipes. That's probably once we release the first version, they may be out the door. We're going to then work on creating recipes, business recipes and engineering recipes and whatnot. So you as a developer or a product owner or a product manager can sort of leverage, consume, and understand what business value our endpoints, our APIs bring to the table. So that's all I wanted to share in this. We are going through. So ultimately, we want to see a workspace. We would see a workspace. We expect to see a workspace in our Postman, a client that has all directories have a tick mark, and all endpoints within each of those directories also have a tick mark. So we know that we've actually tested each and every one of those endpoints, and everything works as we expect for them to work. So hopefully that gives you some indication. If not, again, feel free to hit me up, ask me. More than happy to share the experience that we've actually we have in the process of actually publishing this first API on our gateway. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.